welcome to the Cory Morgan Show during the pre-election season, whenever that might be. Tomorrow, a week, 6 months, who knows? We're watching though, we're ready. We're chomping at the bit. It's got to be coming soon, right? So, thanks for tuning in. This show is live, so hey, make sure to use that comments scroll over there. Let's make it interactive. Send me questions, send things for my guests. I don't necessarily read them all out, but I do read them all sitting there, and I appreciate seeing you all active. Got a good one today. Good to see you there, E Sharp. Dan McTeague, he's a former Liberal member of Parliament, but he's from back in when there were actually still some common sense Liberals, back in the Chrétien days. Again, we still preferred Conservatives, but the Liberals weren't all as lonely left as they are now. Now he's the head of Canadians for Affordable Energy. He's been on the show before, and he talks a lot of good common sense. So he's going to talk some federal issues with us. So let's get on to some of the other business, too. This episode of the Cory Morgan Show is sponsored by New World Precious Metals, and they're based right here in Alberta. Hey, buying local is in right now. Years of inflationary money printing and rising debt, they've decimated the average Canadian savings. You don't want to look at your accounts these days. Gold and silver, they've held their value. They've done it for thousands of years. Last year, they saw 30% gains. So New World Precious Metals offers unique platforms to help protect and grow your hard-earned wealth with gold and silver. So check it out, guys. You can get in on the gold and silver game, newworldpm.com. All right, let's talk about our new Prime Minister. What an honor we've had a Prime Minister. I know that most of you haven't had a chance to vote for or against this Prime Minister, but this person is our Prime Minister. I don't fully hold it against them. It's the system. That's the way it works. Like it, don't like it. Does mean we need a bloody election soon, though. And it says so much that after coronating a new leader, the Liberal Party feels the best strategy right now is to continue to hide him from public scrutiny as much as possible. Mark Carney's first act as Prime Minister was to fly to Europe rather than speak to Canadians who were caught under his leadership. While citizens are trying to understand and get to know who's running their country, the person in question is rubbing shoulders with the French president and King Charles. I mean, the optics of the move are terrible. But the Liberal strategist must feel that having a newly crowned PM hiding in Europe is still preferable to having him face Canadians and answer questions. So just what terrifies them so much about having it in public? Actually, if you listen to a few conferences, you get a pretty good idea. Either way, upon returning from Europe, Iqaluit was Carney's next destination, and while the good people of Iqaluit deserve visits, and Arctic issues are certainly pressing, it's an odd destination for a politician ostensibly heading into a federal election. Unless, of course, the intent is also to avoid people and critical press. Not many outlets are going to spend the money to send somebody all the way up to the Arctic to follow Carney around, aside from the state broadcaster. And Carney did do a short press conference, but it went poorly to say the least, when they already carefully curated reporters, because of course they don't let people like us in there, dared to ask him about his business dealings and potential conflicts of interest. Carney had a tantrum and went after CBC's Rosemary Barton. Yeah, he was clearly shocked that a member of the state broadcaster would dare to ask a critical question. He even said, look within yourself, Rosemary, or something like that, terribly condescending. But his party expects media subservience, and he won't be holding another availability soon, I suspect. When in populated centres in Canada, Team Carney worked hard to ensure independent media was banned from his events during the leadership campaign. As weak and unprincipled as that tactic is, it can be somewhat understood within an internal partisan race. But is he going to try and ban media from events during the general election when all the Canadians are going to have questions for him? The Liberals are currently enjoying a bump in public support right now. Canadians are eager to support anybody who isn't Trudeau, and Carney appears to fit that bill. Where Trudeau was all hair, breathily delivered sound bites and fake tears, Carney gives the impression of substance and depth. As long as that illusion persists, the Liberals don't want to shake it. Carney may not be Justin Trudeau, but he is pretty deeply involved in the Trudeau government, and he was for quite a while. It's going to be challenging for him to convince voters he's going to be a face of reform and change within the party. At least it will be if he has to face any critical questions from the media. The Liberals under Carney have taken a solid policy stance in claiming they've repealed the consumer carbon tax, but they can't quite repeal it until the House of Commons gets in, but they could do an order in council. Either way, it leads to a lot of questions. Carney's been well established as saying, as a strong proponent to the carbon tax. They told us the world was going to end. We were all going to burn. There was global boiling. How can he reconcile that? Well, we don't know. We can't ask any questions of him. He's still hiding from the press. He's also promising to increase the carbon tax on industries, which will lead to higher prices for consumer goods. How he plans to square that with Canadians is unknown because he won't talk to them. There's questions of Carney's business interests, of course, whether or not he has put them all in blind trust to avoid conflicts. And hey, he's a very affluent man. It's not a crime, but it leads to challenges when avoiding these potential conflicts. He won't disclose any of that yet. The best way to get to know a man would be through holding a general election, but when asked about the date for that, Carney gave a non-answer. The biggest question right now, though, is on his financial holdings. So, if he won't disclose them, he's going to be forced to in 100 days. Why would you not just disclose them now? Unless there's a big whopping conflict of interest in there, of course. He's determined to hide his financial dealings until after an election's been held. So just how many large corporate government contracts does his companies hold anyways? Dozens? None? I don't know. Carney's already making major decisions as a prime minister despite having no electoral mandate. Canadians deserve to know more about this man. If the leader of a party is an asset, the party would be exposing him to the public as much as possible. The party would want to bring their leader out to the world and endear the citizens to them. If a party thinks the best tactic for a leader is to hide them from the public as much as possible, though, I suspect they're hiding a very serious problem. Hopefully we'll figure out what that is before the end of the election and people wake up, because those polls are scary. All right, let's get on to other news with our news editor here in the newsroom. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Cory. Yourself?
I'm all right.
Yeah, those press conferences of Carney's were train wrecks.
Oh,
and he just doesn't seem to be able to speak properly. It's apparently he said 21 times in one answer.
Tasked somebody to count them, did you?
Well, no, that's what that's what Twitter does for you. There's always somebody out there counting them.
Well, I noticed he does the same thing that old Justin used to as well, though. When a question comes, he'll pause, slowly drink some water for a little while, then put it down. And then he'll spit out a piece of word salad that sounds just like Justin used to. It's almost like the same person is writing his lines.
It is. It could be. It very well could be. We just don't know, do we? Hey, I see on your YouTube channel you took a drive in the country lately.
Oh, yes. I take Jane out on the nicest dates. We went for a day trip out to the Siksika Reserve, east of Calgary there, to get some video and just to show people what a reserve looks like. Most people haven't been on a reserve before. I mean, it's a big issue. It's a lot of things. I think maybe some people should get a good idea of what it looks like out there.
Yeah, it's about a 20-minute documentary, I think, and we're going to get it out on our Western channel, Western Standard channels as soon as John gets it all ready.
Right on, yeah, we're sharing it wider. I mean, it was just something hacked together by me on a whim, and now we've got John making it into something a little more presentable. But it's been well received, thousands of views on it. People are quite interested, actually.
Yeah, it was quite good, yeah. And until you've been on a reserve, you really just don't know what the conditions are like.
No, and as I hate to say it, it's one of the better reserves. I've been on a lot of them over the years, and actually the Siksika is not in as poor a shape as some of them, but as people will see in the video, it's pretty rough out there.
Yeah. Our Sean Polzer took a drive in the country last night up to Caroline.
Oh, yes.
There was a big town meeting focusing on a huge new solar panel project that's going to be built up there, and basically the town is trying to get it stopped. So it's sort of David versus Goliath type battle to stop this solar farm monstrosity from coming in. You've noticed these idiots in the States setting Teslas on fire, which is a dumb thing to do because the car's got like 19 cameras in it and everybody can see your face. Because I guess they were afraid of that sort of violence, the Vancouver International Car Show has kicked Tesla out. Strange decision, I think. Total of 14 oil and gas and pipeline CEOs sent a letter out to the various political parties today saying we need some common sense in the Canadian energy industry once again, and they're sort of outlining their plans as to what they're looking for. Some grim news really out of China today, where it's been reported that China has executed several Canadians recently. So Global Affairs says, they were aware of the reports. They're not going to publicly name the deceased, and their best advice is, don't smuggle drugs into China, which seems to be fairly sensible advice, I would think.
Yeah, well, people should have watched Midnight Express to see, at least the Turkish version of what happens to you playing those games. Drug smuggling's got a terrible outcome in some of the countries that are a little less respectful of human rights.
Yeah, no kidding. Trump last night endorsed Carney, says he much rather prefers dealing with liberals than I think he didn't name Poilievre by name, but he says the conservative leader has said nasty things about him. So that's probably the best news Poilievre's had all week.
Probably is. I'd like to hear Trump try to pronounce Poilievre.
Yeah, that would be good fun.
I got a sneaking suspicion he'd have a little issue with that one.
Well, we have people in here who can't even pronounce it.
Yes, I know.
So we won't mention any names. Derek Fildebrandt. And Trudeau, Xi CTF points out today that Trudeau is in line for $8.4 million in pensions. He not only gets his $144,000 a year pension as an MP, but he gets a second pension because he was a prime minister. And if he lives to 90, it all adds up to $8.4 million. Not that we're going to have to hold a garage sale for him anyways. He's a millionaire many times over, as soon as he was born, actually. So that's the most read story on the site right now, Cory.
Yeah, the Western Standard pension plan leaves a little to be desired in comparison to that.
Yes, a little bit, like about $8.4 million in difference.
I think we saved some bottles and things for potential early retirements. But
there you go. There you go. Well, I'm on the Freedom 85 plan. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar, yes. But, independent media, we aren't in it for the money. That's
no,
for sure.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave. I'll let you get back into there earning your trip to 85th year retirement.
There you go. Another day, another 60 cents.
Right on. Thanks, Dave.
All right.
Talk to you later. That is our news editor. I see lots of stories constantly breaking. I mean, keep watching the Western Standard site. It is updated all the time. Dave's in there hammering on it, on the case of reporters like Jen back behind me in the newsroom and others in there. The reason we can do that is because you guys have been subscribing. We don't take tax dollars. We are not subsidized. So we rely on you, and it keeps us accountable to you. But check it out, guys. That's the way we could do it. westernstandard.news/subscriptions. I mean, we're going to be covering the election hard and heavy whenever the heck it's called. And, of course, we'll cover everything else as well while we're at it. But we need to be able to expand. We need to be able to do those things. If you subscribed already, thank you very much. We appreciate it. If you haven't yet, come on. Get on with it, guys. It's time. All right, so let's see. I'll just kind of cover a thing or two here before we. There was the quote from Mr. Carney when he responded to Rosemary Barton to the question at that conference. Said, "Look inside yourself, Rosemary." Talk about condescending, disrespectful. This is a prime minister. At a press conference, politicians can get crabby. If the media is on your case, you're having a bad day, whatever. But still, you have a degree of respect. But what I found telling, as I said, why I think he was most upset wasn't even just that he was getting hard questions, though he's certainly not accustomed to that. But it was a hard question and a repeated question from a CBC personality. They didn't expect anybody at the CBC was ever going to toss them a tough question. And he was quite enraged by it. I mean, she didn't call him Mark when she was asking the questions. There's little bits for, little things when you're showing respect for other individuals. When I interview a cabinet minister in Alberta, for example, a lot of them, I know because I've worked my way up through the Wild Rose Party days and so on. It's the same people who have ended up in cabinet today. Hey, if we're out for a coffee or something, we speak to each other by first name basis. When they're on the show, I refer to them as Minister this, or Mr. such and such, or Ms. such. You don't go by first names for these things. And I doubt Rosemary and Mr. Carney are very close. But this is a very prickly man. He's not new to public life. He's not new to exposure, but he's new to that kind of scrutiny. He's new to this kind of game. And it's interesting because they don't have a lot of time to play with. They've got a federal election looming on them, and he's going to see scrutiny and questioning and pressure like he hasn't dealt with before. So it's going to be interesting, if nothing else, when push comes to shove. Because as I said in my opening monologue, you can't hide him from the press forever, particularly when an election comes. They're riding a wave of support right now. But if they try to ride for another 38 days or so by hiding him, by shielding him, the public it's not going to pass the smell test. That's going to foster distrust. So I imagine he's not sleeping much as they're trying to train him in communications. And as Dave said too, 21 ums and ahs in one answer or something. Well, fair enough, though. Justin Trudeau used to be pretty horrible in his first couple of years for ums and ahs, and he got a little better towards the end. I found his voice no less grating by the end of his time in there, but at least he didn't have quite as many hesitations going on throughout. But it's going to be a short and a long campaign at the same time, I think. But we're kind of looking forward to it and kind of dreading it. All right, let's get on to my guest. He's quite familiar with campaigns, been through his share of them, and watches politics closely, and is very outspoken on X and on his website and in media in general. And that's Dan McTeague of the Canadians for Affordable Energy. That tongue twister going on there. Also a former Liberal member of Parliament from back in the days when the Liberals were much more respectable than they are today. So thanks for coming by again, Dan. It's been a while.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, it's good to be here. And some days I think I wonder where this party's going, but it's definitely not the party I remember. So let's have at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, something interesting that's kind of developed is we've evolved into a two-party system in a way for the first time in a long, long time. That's part of what's kind of boded poorly for the Conservatives because the NDP they are barely a factor anymore.
Yeah, and it's almost trading positions compared to where they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. And it was the Liberal Party that morphed into the NDP. I lost that election after six successful runs. And now it's the other way around. So it looks like the voters in the center left can't control themselves. You're either a socialist or you're a grifter, or you happen to be someone who follows a certain particular warped ideology, whether it's New Democrat or Liberal. Looks like I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference?
Well, no, they're pretty indistinguishable, particularly under Justin Trudeau. I mean, he definitely pulled the party to the left, into the realm of the woke. Part of what's happening, though, is we're seeing an attempted and maybe even a little bit successful so far rebranding from Mark Carney. I mean, he's taken the bullet out of Poilievre's gun on a carbon tax election by saying he's going to end the consumer carbon tax, and he's managing to stay mum on the fact that he's going to dump all of that onto the emitters and the consumers will still pay for it. Maybe you could explain some of that, what's going on with the carbon tax games now. This is more into your specialty in energy.
Cory, we've talked about this for 7 or 8 years. Canadians didn't believe us. I said there would come a day when you wouldn't just have unaffordable energy. You'd wind up paying a lot for everything else, and sooner or later the country would collapse. Of course, we had massive amounts of money, public money being spent to make public service people happy, hiring more of them. We saw massive expenditures during the COVID period. And we used all these funds to, give people the impression that, hey, there's no problem with these carbon taxes. They won't have an effect. That was 2015, 2018, 2019. It's now 2025 to do a spin on Trudeau's old comments. And people are really ticked. And, the extent to which Mr. Carney is going to try to distinguish himself from his signature policy, which is carbon taxes under net zero, really bears a lot of scrutiny. Up until he became leader, we were surprised at the number of things that he took credit for. Including, of course, but not limited to the 1998 balancing the budget, where I was a member of parliament. That was news to me. Saved the country from the global economic meltdown in 2008. Of course, this is a fellow who did wonderful things in Britain, left nice and early. However, despite all that he has said and has been challenged by a very weak leadership campaign, probably the weakest I've seen in my lifetime, and a media that really hasn't held his feet to the fire, we now see him trying to attempt to basically pull the wool over everyone's eyes. And I want to be really, really clear about this. I know carbon taxes. I know their effect on consumers to the 10th of a cent. And I can tell you with full regard to my 18 years as a Liberal member of Parliament, this is a shell game. But pardon the pun, they're basically going to take this off for the period of campaign and restore it. So every consumer is going to pay for it out there. Why? Because the framework legislation has not been changed, nor have the Liberals indicated that they have any intention of changing it. If they win the government, you and I and everybody in this country are going to pay a hell of a lot more than what we're paying today. And if you don't like what you've seen over the past 4 or 5 years while he was our prime economic advisor, I got news for you. You're going to hate what you see in the next 4 or 5 years if you give these people a fourth mandate to further ruin the country.
No, it's been getting very troubling to think that might be what's actually happening. I mean, people, I'm hoping will just kind of pay a little more attention. I mean, it's been such an insane, tumultuous time. You turn on the news and your head just spins. Even as a news junkie and wonk like me, I get tired of it eventually. Like, holy cow, the craziness coming out of the White House, the craziness coming from our domestic leaders. You tune out a little bit, and I think that gives people like Carney room to sort of pull the wool over their eyes, as you said, because people's eyes are all over the place. They don't even know where to focus anymore. They just want to see stability, even if it's fake.
Well, they can't reward people who've been giving us bad service for the past several years. I take notice the fact that Donald Trump seems to be endorsing Mark Carney over Pierre Poilievre. I think that's a great thing, and it'll go hand in hand with all the Canadians who've suddenly rediscovered their nation. Elbows up nonsense, and the Canadian flag and buying Canadian. Where the hell were you for the past 10 years? When you denigrated the nation, when you tore down statues, when you poured paint on top of them, when you were ashamed of your past, when you bent a knee. I mean, look. Canadians have really got to think about this, Cory. It's not just about the politicians, it's about the Canadians who really need to smarten it up and bring their game up a little higher. Because at this point, it seems to me, as someone who's experienced in the trenches, knocking on tens of thousands of doors here in Eastern Canada, there's been a degradation, not in the quality of our politicians. We can always argue about that. The quality of the constituent. Are they really that gullible that they can be fleeced into buying another 4 years of something they can't afford? That seems that way, but I think it's going to change. And I think once there's fair and balance between the two operating parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, in the next election, I think it's going to Canadians are going to finally get what they've been paying for several years, and that's a real honest answer on these things, especially on the carbon tax, where it needs to be scrapped, along with the net zero fantasies that are very pernicious to Canada, while the Liberals can spend the next 4 or 5 terms rebuilding themselves and getting back to the center where they were when I was an MP.
Yeah, well, and back to energy and back to kind of this new discovery, it seems a lot of progressive Canadians and net zero people and all the rest have suddenly realized that maybe getting more pipelines to the coasts might be a good idea, something Alberta's been screaming from the rafters for over a decade now. But to be honest, I don't believe them when they say they're going to expand them. I really do not. It doesn't gel with their net zero ideology. I mean, they'll claim it right now, but I don't see them doing it if they manage to get in for another term. They'll just regulate it to death again.
Yeah, well, what's the good of building a pipeline if you're not prepared to put anything in it, within it? I mean, if you cap your natural gas, you cap your oil, and you put emissions on it, so that, the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, came out and said this is going to have a catastrophic effect, not just on Alberta and producers, provinces, but to the entire country as a whole. Look, Canadians really have to get up their game. I heard this nonsense from the left and from the Greenies saying for the years, we should refine all of our own oil. And then I said, well, how the hell are you going to get it to market if you still have a problem and you can't pipeline it anywhere? What are you supposed to do? Drive it by truck, maybe in the back of an oxen cart? Because that's what we're going to. And I'm being pedantical about these things, but I also want to make it very clear. My engagement with the public isn't really about worrying about the politicians and the media. My engagement is direct with Canadians. Do not be sold a bill of goods as you have been for the past several years. Wake the hell up, do some research, understand why your standard of living has collapsed, and it has collapsed. There isn't a single Canadian who can argue right now that they don't think things are worse now than what they were 10 years ago. And that's because we have a reckless and irresponsible government that has found this country ability to spend that we didn't need to spend on, and for which we have destroyed our ability, the golden goose, if you will, oil and gas, but manufacturing as well. And we've invested money in things like electric vehicles, for God's sakes. We put up tariffs against the Chinese who've had a 10-year, 15-year advantage. And what's that doing in return? It's killing our pork producers. It's hurting our canola producers. It's hurting our agriculture sector. There isn't nothing this government has touched that hasn't hurt the Canadian public. And if you want more of that, if you think you can afford more of that, talk to your kids, talk to your grandchildren, and talk to your neighbor, for goodness sakes, because everybody's in very, very dire straits right now. Oh, yeah,
it's absurd. And nobody's even talking about lifting that ridiculous tariff on Chinese EVs, which weren't cutting into a market that Canada even has. Sylvain Charlebois put it excellently online, saying, we're killing our local farmers to protect an imaginary industry.
Exactly.
It's nuts. And again, if Carney was this financial genius, you'd think one of the first things he'd be saying is we're going to put a call out to China and resolve this trade war right away, because their demand is simple. Trump, you don't know what the heck that guy wants hour by hour. But China's pretty straightforward. Just drop the bloody tariff on our EVs and we'll back off on the canola and seed oils and other such things. But they aren't talking that way.
Cory, on the weekend, I decided to take a trip down to Ingersoll, drive my daughter back to university. I came across the CAMI plant, which builds something called the Bright Drop. It's a van, a delivery van, basically. It was supposed to sell, and they're all electric vehicles. GM put in a $1.8 billion. You and I, as taxpayers, another couple $2 billion, federal and provincial. And they were supposed to sell 100,000 units. They sold 2,100 units. And of course, the plant is likely to go belly up anytime soon, along with the Northvolts, along with the Lion battery, the Lion buses, all of these other things. I'm here not far from Oakville. I can see the smokestacks from here for the old Oakville plant. They're supposed to be an EV plant, now turned into an F-250, F-350 plant. But, you're looking at a situation where we backed the wrong horse, and we continue to make these bad decisions on the assumption that even though the United States has ended its EV mandates, even though Canadians are no longer getting subsidized for buying these things, we can still build them because we're trying to pretend that there's a market that exists. It doesn't. I'm not offended by people who drive EVs. That's up to you. If you want to drive one, that's great. Not so great, by the way, when it's minus 20 here in Ontario or minus 40 out where you guys are. But at any rate, if you think you have the electrical infrastructure and the bottomless pit when it comes to subsidies and government debt to pay for these things, I think people really need to elude or get rid of their delving into illusions, because this is the worst public policy decision I think we've made. It's on top of the carbon tax policy, and it really speaks to the fact that if we put emission caps and all of these other wonderful things coming down the pipe from net zero, unless some people are going to get serious about nixing net zero, this country might as well think about nixing its economic future very quickly.
Yeah, well, in part, of course, that's just your whole, you let us know all the time. I mean, that's your basis of being. energy, affordable energy, it impacts everything. Everything. Every consumer product you get, your paycheck every day, the taxes that the government takes, it's all based on energy. There's no one commodity that impacts everything across the blanket as much as energy. Canada should be an energy superpower. I mean, we've got so much for resources, whether it's hydroelectric, whether it's uranium, whether it's natural gas, whether it's you name it. We've got it, yet we just seem to be intent on hamstringing ourselves. Do you think, though, we could change this into an election about energy? Because right now they're all campaigning against Trump. And that's, while that might be effective in the short term on polls, it's not going to help us with our economy.
No, but it's ironic that it's taken Donald Trump to make us appreciate our country and to finally want to build pipelines. But look, I worked with Sylvain Charleroi on a project not too long ago in which he said, look, the carbon taxes aren't just hitting energy prices. As I had suggested several years ago, it's going to affect everything else, including the cost of food. And guess what? Pushing back against our traditional, economists, the usual suspects that we have out there, get paid lots of money for the federal government to basically polish the apple of all this carbon nonsense and net zero nonsense. He came out and said, I got 2 peer-reviewed studies that point out that the effect of carbon taxes and government policy to try to green everything and fault Canada for creating all this CO2 in the world, that, by the way, is a giver of life and is plant food for all intents and purposes. Regardless of that, came out with 2 peer-reviewed studies to basically show it to these wonderful economists, a lot of them from Alberta, I think Trome and I guess the other ones, Leach and others that keep coming out and saying, oh, there's no effect. Baloney. Anybody who's shopping in this country today, where they're trying to make ends meet, knows full well what's happened. And you don't have to just argue or have a discussion with people who do the food purchasing in the house. I do some of it here. Go to the food banks and understand just how bad the situation has become. This should not have happened in our Canada. Anybody who tolerates that, might I suggest that you get yourself a brown paper bag, put it over your head, because you got to be ashamed of yourself for being so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was interesting watching Mr. Charlebois, Dr. Charlebois, I should be correct with it, and having kind of the geek fight online with other economists, because he did call them out, and the thing that he did point out was all of the ones he's fighting with got government funding one way or another.
Exactly.
And boy, they sure got furious when he pointed that out.
Yeah, no, and you know what? I'm sick of it, because it seems the only people backing this kind of stuff is paid media, paid academics, paid influencers, and where's it coming from? It's coming from the bottom line of people who are now getting ready to have to pay next month their income taxes, assuming, of course, they can make ends meet. This is disgusting. This is wrong. They are robbing Peter to pay Paul. And at the end of the day, I've got a very simple solution. Stop paying them. Listen, you got a great idea. It's like Jean Chrétien said about cutting back on programs in the 1990s. I think it was NACSA, National Action Committee on the Status of Women. He cut their budget. He said, we don't have money for this stuff. He said, if it's an important issue, go out and fund yourself. And that's what these people should do, rather than coming out pretending that they can use their academic credentials to bamboozle us into believing that we're somehow getting a deal when in fact we're being fleeced.
Yeah, well, it's going to be on people like yourself and even us over here, I think, over the course of the next 40 days or so, just to try our hardest to keep things on the right discussion and let people realize, because it's not that complicated when you really drill down. It isn't. You just got to move the fog out of the way for people when they see how directly these things impact them, and they can make their choice on their own. Canadians aren't stupid. They just can be a little politically lazy sometimes, I think.
I'm here in Eastern Canada. I have 2 interviews in Quebec in the next hour or so, I'll continue to deliver the message. And as an Easterner, I get it. And it's high time the rest of the country recognize the more you do to undermine the very things that make us a great nation, the more distant it is that we're going to keep this country united and economically sustainable.
Excellent. Well, I know you've got to run, so before I let you go, where can people find what you're up to and keep track of things and learn from you there?
Cory, when we're not exchanging information, affordableenergy.ca, a lot of the work that I've done there. And Twitter, of course, Gas Price Wizard is the best way to engage. And I give as good as I get. So be prepared. If it's good stuff, I will work along with it. But if you're going to be nasty and you're going to be a troll, you're going to get it back with both boots.
All right. Well, much appreciated. I like the back and forth myself anyways. So thank you again for coming on. I hope we get to talk again soon. And I really appreciate your work, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Cory. Cheers.
Great. Thanks. So again, folks, that was Dan McTeague of Canadians for Affordable Energy. And yeah, as you say, he's got lots to say and lots of common sense. We've just got to, I think people are getting a bit of an overload. They're getting a barrage and cutting through. One of the things to watch for, how do I trust, who do I know who to trust or whatnot? Look, I have a slant, I have a bias, but I don't hide it whatsoever. This is an opinion show. Dave, who was on earlier, he's got his own biases, but he keeps it out of the news copy. That's different. News copy is a different thing than opinion. People on shows are writing opinion columns. But the other thing to watch is who's paying the bills. As we were talking about with Dr. Charlebois and other economists, some economists get some good funding from the government. Thus, they tend to put out papers that are favorable to government policy. Look who's paying the bills. And when that comes to media as well, of course, CBC, which again was so surprising, they get paid through tax dollars, of course, and through stealing advertising dollars from the private market. And they were so shocked when Rosie Barton actually questioned something, which I was kind of surprised as well. But whatever. I think part of it is, I mean, she always, she used to literally, you could see it. Her eyes would glaze a little when she would mention Justin Trudeau's name. I mean, she really, really had a thing for Justin Trudeau. And then now Trudeau's gone, Carney's there, and she's not so much married to the Liberals, she's married to the concept of Justin Trudeau. So she's a little bitter, and she's going to hold the Liberals accountable. But are they ever upset? As people are petitioning to have her fired because she dared to question Carney in a conference. What sort of democratic atmosphere have we got? Where the cancel culture kooks, the cat ladies, the ones who smell of old cat piss, and that's who they are. Look online, it's amazing. It's a demographic that's quite something. They're all quite the same. Central Canadian, upper middle age, single, crabby women that I guess they wrapped their fantasy worlds around Justin Trudeau, and they're still quite upset now at his loss too, but very, again, connected to his replacement now. Now, speaking of middle-aged female fools, and yes, I understand that there are only two genders, and Mayor Gondek in Calgary is female. And this was an interesting one that came up. Calgary Transit's looking for merchandise ideas. See, the city of Calgary, and this is happening in cities all over, and this is going to tie into some of the stuff Dan was talking about. They're always pleading poverty. They're always raising taxes. They never can apparently find ways to cut spending. Apparently they spend so efficiency, there just isn't a nickel to be saved anywhere. All they can do is raise taxes. Now they want merchandise ideas from Calgary Transit. What sort of genius came up to this? What are you supposed to have? You're going to wear a Calgary Transit t-shirt showing pictures of the fentanyl addicts under the stairs, maybe the syringes over in the corner, or maybe they're talking about branded items, stab-proof vests commuters can wear on the way to work. Or, helmets. I don't know. That this is what you guys are down to. But what they won't say is how about collecting the friggin' fares? How about that? Anybody familiar with Calgary Transit? Edmonton's the same way, and they're pretty much the only ones in the developed world that are like this. They have the honor system for riding the trains. There's ticket machines selling tickets, and you can buy tickets through an app, but there's no turnstile, there's nothing else. And you get on those trains with all the stench of human release and around some of the very troubled people, and walk your way around the shopping carts and try not to sit on a syringe. And you know that a number of the troubled people riding that train didn't buy a friggin' ticket. So you got that bunch. Now, they're never going to buy tickets, but you start enforcing and get them off the damn train. Get them off there immediately. I know there's no sense chasing them for fines. They don't have any money, but kick them off the bloody train. And you know what? When that element is off the train and out of the stations, more people will choose to ride the train. Right now, they're scared to. It's frightening on parts of that train at times. The other part is there's a number of people, and I hate to say it, but they're just not paying because your odds of getting checked for a ticket are next to none. I've ridden that train now and then. You almost never get checked. Start checking. Bring in revenue. Don't worry about trying to sell branded Calgary Transit t-shirts. Just charge people for the damn tickets. But it's the social equity crowd. You see, that's what it is. That's what's underlying. When these discussions come up, the reality is there's an extreme left wing in city council and city halls, and they're in city halls across the country. And they believe that free transit should be a right. They believe that it's unfairly cracking down on people if they're riding that train without paying their fare. They think it's a right for them to sit on that train and lose bowel control. Because of course they used that a lot when cold weather came and the trains were being used as rolling homeless shelters. Because unfortunately a lot of the addicts are in such bad shape, they can't go into the regular homeless places, shelters and such. So they started using trains for it, but that's not the place for it. But then people were saying it was cruel and heartless if we take them off the train. Well, isn't it a little cruel and heartless to the senior citizen trying to get to work, the student trying to get to work, or even the grown man? I get nervous around some of these people when they're especially the meth addicts, because they go pretty wild. Jordan put out a commenter, said, how about a t-shirt saying, "I survived the C train"? Yeah, I know. It's frightening. So either way, the city of Calgary, we were talking about electric vehicles and so on, and the list, there are EV companies across Canada just going broke left, right, and center. They're falling like dominoes. You hear about the big ones, but there's little ones too, relative. There's one that was called Vicinity. It was out in Vancouver. And guess what? The city of Calgary bought a bunch of electric buses from them. Yeah, it was, I don't know what it was, $10 or $12 million or something, because this was supposed to be a trial project, just a small amount of buses, 7 or 8 buses they were going to use. And before the buses even got here, because it was supposed to be a pilot program, they said, Gondek and her gang said, you know what, the electric buses are working so well up in Edmonton, we don't need a pilot, we're going to dive all in and spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and buy 100 and some buses, these electric buses. Well, after that, Edmonton, their bus program fell apart, literally. Their buses were garbage. They had to get a bunch of custom work done to them. They didn't work in cold weather. Then they started breaking down. Then they couldn't get parts to fix them because guess what? The company that made the buses went bankrupt. Now, Calgary, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting on their trial project buses from Vicinity out in Vancouver, a company that makes these things. And they never quite disclosed how much money they gave them. They also spent their money retooling the bus barns for chargers for these buses and so on. Finally, it turned out Vicinity went broke. Calgary never even got a single bus. But what did they do? They're sourcing buses from yet another bloody manufacturer. They look all over North America. Just Google electric bus failure, and you'll see it. These things are not a success anywhere. They're junk. They're subsidized crap, and they're ripping people off. And still, it's going. But whose fault is it? I don't know. Ours? Because we've got to start changing. That's what I talked a bit about with Dan. The electoral laziness, the indifference. I know people are tired out. But guess what? People like Jody Gondek, she might get reelected. Because people don't pay attention. Turnouts in civic elections are 20, 30, 40%. It's sad. It's pathetic. And then those who do come out to vote are left-wing moonbats with crazed causes on their shoulders. We got to get off our own bloody butt and deal with it. Likewise in the federal election. So the polls, I'm getting bloody concerned. I sure am. Because, at first it looked like they were just outliers. It looked like it was just crazy Frank Graves with ecos, putting wishful thinking out there in the polls, saying the Liberals were going to, come back and win. Frank Graves' polls are still grossly exaggerated. He also showed that there was support for the Bloc Québécois in Alberta and that the Liberals would win here. But every pollster is showing it now. Even the most favorable pollster to the Conservatives with Abacus, I wouldn't say they are favorable to the Conservatives, but their polls were. They're showing it now neck and neck. There's no doubt there is a trend. People are going to the Liberals for whatever bloody reason. And really, you could tell that Dan was flabbergasted with it too. We're exhausted. One of the best images that's been going around, Sylvain Charlebois has been putting that one out too. And it's the GDP per capita in Canada growth in the last 10 years versus every other country in the world. And Canada is like 3% over the last 10 years. And the United States at the top, their GDP per capita grew by like 20, 30% or so, 21%, I think. Massively. That's the measure of wealth. That's the measure of how well we're doing. We're not doing well at all, guys. We have less in our pockets all the time. And if we put the same dingbats back into power who made that trend in the first place, how on earth could we possibly expect it to change? Yet here we are. Here we are. I see some of the commenters saying, they believe it'll change once the election campaign gets going. I believe so too. I think so. Carney, right now it's a bump. It's still a bounce. And we still got crazy times going on right now. Unprecedented. People are nervous. People are upset. I've been frustrated. There's nothing I hate more than seeing a tariff war. Because you know what? It's stupid. It's stupid. Tariffs are stupid economic policy. And I know some of the Trump supporters get upset with me, but too damn bad. Trump's policies on tariffs are stupid. He's doing some right things in some areas, but the tariff stuff is wrong and it's dumb. And it's hurting the Americans as much, maybe even more than us, but the bottom line is we're all bloody hurting. And people would like to come in and try and say, well, let's resolve this, let's make a deal. But you never know what that guy's saying day from day. You can't even start the negotiation process. Meanwhile, you watch your savings start to evaporate. Meanwhile, you worry about the industries you work in. So yeah, people are exhausted, they're beat up, they're tired, and it leaves them vulnerable. And they're vulnerable and they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes. The Liberals, you look at the ads they're putting on. Right now, And again, I know I got some people who follow the show who like Trump. Good for you, that's fine. But most of Canadians are really, really pissed off with him right now. And the Liberals know that. And they've been showing commercials with Polyev right next to Trump and taking quotes that sound similar and trying to paint them as each other. And you know what? Unfortunately, it's working. As Dave said, Trump came out and said, look, I'd prefer to deal with the Liberals than with the Conservatives. I don't know what he's trying to reverse the trend or anything. I don't think Trump cares either way. It does help Polyev, I guess. The last thing he needs is Trump coming up and saying, I really like this guy. And, it's just going to make things worse. And when is this bloody election coming? It's one of the biggest flaws in the Canadian system. I just despise that, where the person in power can play coy, can mess around with the date, and just, I'll call it when it's convenient for me. And then those numbers, right? And it's not a shocker. Those numbers were always there. It's just we see them coming in total. This shows how badly we're taking it from behind as well. We got Justin Trudeau, an $8.4 million pension. What do you get maximum in Canada with the Canadian pension plan? $800 a month or something like that? You pay your whole bloody life. Trudeau was in there, for 15 years from being an MP to latest resignation. $8.4 million pension coming for you. And you got to remember, the whole time he was prime minister, he didn't have to spend a nickel of his own money on anything. He gets a free house. He had free wardrobes. He had free travel. He had free food. He had chefs. He had drivers. So every penny of everything he got in salary for 10 years, straight into the bank or wherever he puts it. Maybe a big Justin piggy bank in his bedroom. I don't know. I don't think a prime minister should be paid poorly. But boy, it sure lets us know who really is running the show when you see something like that. $8.4 million for 10 and some years of work. Not bad, eh? That's nuts. And member of parliament pensions and the Conservatives tend to be as bad as the Liberals when it comes to it as well, and getting rid of these things. They talk big, but they don't do it. Even the Reform Party would go all the way back and date myself into the 90s. Deb Gray and the bunch of them at first refused to take the pension plan. But once they were in office for a couple of terms, they all just kind of slowly slid in and took the pension. I don't know if anybody's ever going to have the courage to cut into that, because once they're in, of course, it cuts into their own wallet. And self-serving politicians, again, they should be paid well. But, keep it simple then. Just when you're paid that much, at best, they should just have an RRSP matching program or something for the time that they're in. There, every year you can put this much of your salary in and the government to match. There's your retirement. They should, fine. But $8.4 million for that dingbat Trudeau. Crazy. And getting back to, I'm just trying to look here. Pierre Poilievre trying, this is where we got to get through the media. I see he's been trying. He's trying to get things out there, and he's playing catch up. So he's been out. He talked about committing $1 billion to build a new road to connect First Nation communities and mineral deposits. The Ring of Fire. This is good stuff. Economic development. And you watch, though. Just like everything else that seems to be happening, Carney will do the same announcement a week later, and the clapping seals of the Canadian legacy media will give him credit for it. The difference is I think Poilievre might actually follow through with it. I don't believe Carney for a second on these things. Poilievre was in Iqaluit not too long ago himself, making announcements and doing those things. Didn't get much attention. Once Carney's there, though, oh boy. And what did he announce? The radar station, we don't have time in the whole show to go through it. Northern Defense, fine. These are issues people are concerned about. But also yet another reconciliation handout that worked out to the people in Nunavut $70,000 a person on top of everything else and every other program. And I tell you what, the main source of income for people in Nunavut is government money, your taxes. And it didn't help. Conditions are terrible in a lot of places up there because it's isolated areas, whole separate story on, the whole reserve system and things like that. But now he's going to toss them all another $70,000 ahead. These things come out during elections. Where is this money going to come from? Well, we know in the end it's going to come from us. But our economy is being beaten on. This, I just get so tired of it. Elections, we fall for it every time. Ralph Klein did it. We're not much better in Alberta. I won't get on the high horse totally. It worked in Alberta. He put out the Ralph Bucks, $400 a person. He put out a check just before election time. Totally crass election buy. People forgetting that it's their own damn money he's giving them back. He's reaching in the wallet, he's taking $1,000 out, and he's giving you $400, and you're thanking him. Well, that's what they're doing through this whole election, both of them. They'll both be, you watch, Poilievre is going to propose to spend a lot of money too, because that's just the way the bloody game goes. He's just better than the Liberals. I'm more believable, and I think has a better understanding of the economic needs we're going to have to pay for these things. But he's not getting the coverage. We're in for a very big turning point in Canada right now with this election. We got to wake up our citizens. I know the Conservatives aren't perfect, but if you think that putting the Liberals in is good for Canada, you're stupid. You really are. You're outright stupid. Look at the numbers. Look at the figures. Look at their track record. You think Carney is changing a thing? As I said with Dave, the same comms person there is behind him, because you can tell when he does his slow glass drink of water and he's got something sticking in his ear just like I do. Somebody's telling him what to say. And it's the same person. The same wizard behind the curtain is sitting there. It's just a different face. Well, either way, frustrating. We'll keep covering things. Look, guys, that's what I've got for today. Hey, tune in Friday, 11 o'clock, live. We're going to be coming live every Friday. No more recorded. Getting on the show, it'll be a longer one, more unrestrained, more election-focused. I got a couple of guests coming on through that. We'll talk about things. The Pipeline's going to be on tonight. Nigel's show comes on. Derek's show comes on. We're doing a lot of digital content, guys. Subscribe on those YouTube channels, Rumble, all the places you're watching us. Share it. Let's get the word out during this election period, and let's make sure Canadians bloody well get it right this time. So tune in on the next one, and I'll see you there, and thanks for tuning in today, guys.
What does success mean to you? Peace of mind? Financial freedom? Generational wealth? What do you see in your future? Investing in gold and silver can help you get there. Through our trading partners, New World Precious Metals offers safe, affordable, secure international accounts to help you meet your unique financial goals. Connect with one of our experienced team members. Invest in gold and silver today.